ॐ भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्। ॐ शांति शांति शांति. Namaskar my dear friends. This is second video on Bhagwan Sri Ramana Maharshi's clarifications of doubts on self-enquiry in a very detailed way. This video starts with the nature of mind. That which rises in this body as I is the mind. The mind is but an aggregate of thoughts. Thoughts alone constitute the mind, and for all thoughts the base or source is the I thought. I is the mind. Thoughts alone make up the mind, and of all thoughts the I thought is the root. What is called mind is but the notion I. The mind is a bundle of thoughts. The thoughts arise because there is the thinker. The thinker is the ego. The ego, if sought, will automatically vanish. The ego and the mind are the same. God illumines the mind and shines within it. One cannot know God by means of the mind. One can but turn the mind inwards and merge it in God. No attempt should be made to destroy the mind. To think or wish is in itself a thought. If the thinker is sought, the thoughts will disappear. Thoughts will disappear because they are unreal. The idea of difficulty is itself an obstacle to realization. It must be overcome. To remain as the self is not difficult. This thought of difficulty is the chief obstacle. A little practice in discovering the source of I will make you think differently. Absolute freedom from thoughts is the state conducive to such recognition of the self. What is called mind is a wondrous power residing in the self. It causes all thoughts to arise. Apart from thoughts, there is no such thing as mind. Therefore, thought is the nature of mind. Apart from thoughts, there is no independent entity called the world. In deep sleep, there are no thoughts and there is no world. In the states of waking and dream, there are thoughts and there is a world also. Just as the spider emits the thread of the web out of itself and again withdraws it into itself, likewise the mind projects the world out of itself and again resolves it into itself. When the mind comes out of the self, the world appears. Therefore, when the world appears to be real, the self does not appear, and when the self appears, shines, the world does not appear. When one persistently inquires into the nature of the mind will end leaving the self as the residue. What is referred to as the self is the Atma. The mind always exists only in dependence on something gross. It cannot stay alone. It is the mind that is called the subtle body or the soul, Jiva. In the books explaining the nature of the mind, it is thus stated: the mind is formed by the concretion of the subtle portion of the food we eat. It grows with the passions such as attachment and aversion, desire and anger. Being the aggregate of mind, intellect, memory, and egoity, it receives the collective singular name mind. The characteristics that it bears are thinking, determining, etc. Since it is an object of consciousness, the self, it is what is seen, inert. Even though inert, it appears as if conscious because of association with consciousness, like a red hot iron ball. It is limited, non eternal, partite, and changing like wax, gold, candle, etc. It is of the nature of all elements of phenomenal existence. Its locus is the heart lotus, even as the loci of the sense of sight, etc., are the eyes, etc. It is the adjunct of the individual soul thinking of an object. It transforms itself into a mode, and along with the knowledge that it is in the brain, it flows through the five sense channels, gets joined to objects by the brain that is associated with knowledge, and thus knows and experiences objects and gains satisfaction. That substance is the mind. Even as one and the same person is called by different names according to the different functions he performs, so also one and the same mind is called by the different names: mind, intellect, memory, and egoity, on account of the difference in the modes and not because of any real difference. The mind itself is of the form of all, that is, of soul, God, and world. When it becomes of the form of the self through knowledge, there is a release which is of the nature of Brahma. This is the teaching. Since Sattva Guna, the constituent of Prakriti, which makes for purity, intelligence, etc., is the nature of mind, and since the mind is pure and undefiled like ether, what is called mind is in truth of the nature of knowledge. When it stays in that natural, that is pure state, it has not even the name mind. It is only the erroneous knowledge which mistakes one for another, that is called mind. What was originally the pure sattva mind of the nature of pure knowledge forgets its knowledge nature on account of nescience, gets transformed into the world under the influence of tamoguna, that is the constituent of prakriti, which makes for dullness, inertness, etc. Being under the influence of rajoguna, that is the constituent of prakriti, which makes for activity, passions, etc. Imagines I am the body, etc. The world is real. It acquires the constituent merit and demerit through attachment, aversion, etc., and through the residual impressions, vasanas thereof attains birth and death. But the mind, which has got rid of its defilement, sin, through action without attachment performed in many past lives, listens to the teaching of Scripture from a true guru, reflects on its meaning, and meditates in order to gain the natural state of the mental mode of the form of the self, that is, of the form I am Brahma, which is the result of the continued contemplation of Brahma. Thus, will be removed the mind's transformation into the world in the aspect of tamoguna and its roving therein in the aspect of rajoguna. When this removal takes place, the mind becomes subtle and unmoving. It is only by the mind that is impure and is under the influence of rajas and tamas that reality, that is the self, which is very subtle and unchanging, cannot be experienced. Just as a piece of fine silk cloth cannot be stitched with a heavy crowbar, or as the details of subtle objects cannot be distinguished by the light of a lamp flame that flickers in the wind, but in the pure mind that has been rendered subtle and unmoving by the meditation described above, the self-bliss, that is Brahma, will become manifest. As without mind there cannot be experience, it is possible for the purified mind endowed with the extremely subtle mode Virti to experience the self-bliss by remaining in that form, that is the form of Brahma. Then that one's self is of the nature of Brahma will be clearly experienced. The impure mind cannot know God. They say that the mind is twofold. There is the higher pure mind as well as the lower impure mind. The impure mind cannot know Brahma, but the pure mind knows. It does not mean that the pure mind measures the immeasurable self, the Brahma. It means that the self makes itself felt in the pure mind so that even when you are in the midst of thoughts, you feel the presence, you realize the truth that you are one with the deeper self, and that the thought waves are there only on the surface. Brahma cannot be apprehended by the impure mind, but can be apprehended by the pure mind. Through Atam Vichara, the mind gets clear of impurities and becomes pure enough to reflect the truth, the real self. This is impossible when the ego is active and assertive. Pure consciousness, free from all thought, is pure, unbroken awareness of yourself. Rather of being, there is no mistaking it when pure. When the indefinable power of Brahma, one, separates itself from Brahma and in union with the reflection of consciousness, Chidabhasa, assumes various forms, it is called the impure mind. The energy which is accompanied by the reflection of consciousness is called the impure mind, and its state of separation from Brahma is its non-apprehension of Brahma. 1. The indefinable power of Brahma, the energy is Shakti. When it becomes free from the reflection of consciousness, abhasha, through discrimination, it is called the pure mind. Its state of union with the Brahma is its apprehension of Brahma. The nature of the heart, Herdem, Safurna. Evidently, self-consciousness is in relation to the individual himself and therefore has to be experienced in his being with a center in the body as the center of experience. It, it resembles the dynamo of a machine which gives rise to all sorts of electrical works. Not only does it maintain the life of the body and the activities of all its parts and organs, conscious and unconscious, but also the relation between the physical and the subtler planes on which the individual functions. Also, like the dynamo, it vibrates and can be felt by the calm mind that pays attention to it. It is known to the yogis and sadhakas by the name of Safurna, which in Samadhi scintillates with consciousness. Wise men say that there is a connection between the source of the various psychic nerves and the self, that this is the note of heart, that the connection between the sentient and the insentient will exist until this is cut asunder with the aid of true knowledge, that just as the subtle and invisible force of electricity travels through wires and does many wonderful things, so the force of self also travels through the psychic nerves and, pervading the entire body, imparts sentience to the senses, and that if this note is cut, the self will remain as it always is, without any attributes. What is called the heart is no other than Brahma. Call it by any name, God, self, the heart, or the seat of consciousness. It is all the same. The point to be grasped is this, that heart means the very core of one's being, the center without which there is nothing whatever. The heart is the center of spiritual experience. According to the testimony of sages, the spiritual heart center is quite different from the blood propelling muscular organ known by the same name. The spiritual heart center is not an organ of the body. All that you can say of the heart is that it is the very core of your being, that with which you are really identical, as the word in Sanskrit literally means whether you are awake, asleep, or dreaming, whether you are engaged in work or immersed in samadhi. The heart is different from the blood vessel, so called, and is not the Anhata chakra in the middle of the chest, one of the six centers spoken of the books on yoga. This heart is different from the physical heart. Beating is the function of the latter. The former is the seat of spiritual experience. That's all that can be said of it. Truly speaking, pure consciousness is indivisible. It is without parts. It has no form and shape, no within and without. There is no right or left for it. Pure consciousness, which is the heart, includes all, and nothing is outside or apart from it. That is the ultimate truth. From this absolute standpoint, the heart, self, or consciousness can have no particular place assigned to it in the physical body. What is the reason? The body is itself a mere projection of the mind, and the mind is but a poor reflection of the radiant heart. How can that in which everything is contained be itself confined as a tiny part within the physical body, which is but an infinitesimal phenomenal manifestation of the one reality? But people do not understand this. They cannot help thinking in terms of physical body and the world. For instance, you say, I have come to this ashramam all the way from my country beyond the Himalayas. But that is not the truth. Where is there a coming or going or any moment whatever for the one all pervading spirit which you really are? You are where you have always been. It is your body that moved or was conveyed from place to place till it reached this ashramam. This is the simple truth. But to a person who considers himself a subject living in an objective world, it appears as something altogether visionary. It is by coming down to the level of the ordinary understanding that a place is assigned to the heart in the physical body. Heart is the seat of jnanam as well as of the granthi, note of ignorance. It is represented in the physical body by a hole smaller than the smallest pinpoint, which is always shut. When the mind drops down in Kevala Nirvikalpa Samadhi, it opens but shuts again after it. When Sahaja Nirvikalpa Samadhi is attained, it opens for good. The Granthi is the note which ties the insentient body to the consciousness which functions in it. That's why when it is loosened temporarily in Kevala Nirvikalpa, there is no body consciousness. God is said to reside in the heart in the same way as you are said to reside in your body. Yet, heart is not a place. Some place must be named as the dwelling of God for those who take their body for themselves and who comprehend only relative knowledge. The fact is neither God nor we occupy any space. We are bodiless and spaceless in deep sleep, yet in the waking state we appear to be the opposite. Do we not reside in one place? Do you not say you are in your body? Similarly, God is said to reside in the heart. The heart is not one place. Some name is mentioned for the place of God because we think we are in the body. This kind of instruction is meant for those who can appreciate only relative knowledge. Being immanent everywhere, there is no place for God. Because we think we are in the body, we also believe that we are in power. However, we do not think of the body of God or of a method of realization in our deep sleep. Yet, In our waking state, we hold onto the body and think we are in it. Paramatman is that from which the body is born, in which it lives, and unto which it revolves. We, however, think that we reside within the body. Hence, such instruction is given. The instruction means look within. The heart is not physical. Meditation should not be on the right or the left. Although the self enjoys its experiences in the states of waking, dream, and deep sleep, residing respectively in the eyes, throat, and heart. In reality, however, it never leaves its principal seat, the heart. In the heart lotus, which is of the nature of all. In other words, in the mind ether, the light of that self in the form I shines. As it shines thus in everybody, this very self is referred to as the witness, Shakshi, and the transcendent Turiya, literally the fourth. The I-less Supreme Brahma, which shines in all bodies as interior to the light in the form I, is the self-ether or knowledge ether. That alone is the absolute reality. This is the super transcendent Turyatita. Therefore, it is stated that which is called the heart is no other than Brahma. Moreover, for the reason that Brahma shines in the hearts of all souls as the self, the name heart is given to Brahma. Number 1. The meaning of the word hear them, when split thus heareth Ayam, is in fact Brahma. The adequate evidence for the fact that Brahma, which shines as the self, resides in the hearts of all, is that all people indicate themselves by pointing to the chest when say I. In the original text, in the hearts of all individual souls, that which shines is Brahma, hence and hence is called the heart, Brahma Gita. You cannot know it with your mind. You cannot realize it by imagination. When I tell you here is the center pointing to the right side of the chest, you seek true consciousness. Where can you find it? Can you attain it outside yourself? You have to find it internally. Therefore, you are directed inward. The heart is the seat of consciousness or consciousness itself. 2. That from which all thoughts of embodied beings issue forth is called the heart. All descriptions of it are only mental conceptions. 3. The I thought is said to be the root of all thoughts. In brief, that from which the I thought springs forth is the heart. 4th, if the heart be located in Anahata Chakra, how does the practice of yoga begin in Muladhara? 5th, this heart is different from the blood circulating organ. Hridam stands for Harit, the center which sucks in everything, and I am this, and it thus stands for the self. 6. The location of this heart is on the right side of the chest, not at all on the left. The light of awareness flows from the heart through Susumna to Sahasrara. 7. From there it flows to the entire body, and then all experiences of the world arise. Viewing them as different from the light, one gets caught up in samsara. The sacred text describing it say, between the two nipples, below the chest and above the abdomen, there are 6 organs of different colors, one of them resembling the bud of a water lily, and situated 2 digits to the right is the heart. It is inverted, and within it is a tiny orifice which is the seat of dense darkness, ignorance, full of desires. All the psychic nerves, nadis, depend upon it. It is the abode of the vital forces, the mind, and the light of consciousness. But the But although it is described thus, the meaning of the word heart here then is the self Atma, as it is denoted by the terms existence, consciousness, bliss, eternal and plenum, Sat, Chit, Anandam, Nityam, Purnam. It has no differences such as exterior and interior or up and down. That tranquil state in which all thoughts come to an end is called the state of the self. When it is realized as it is, there is no scope for discussions about its location inside the body or outside. Note, in the original text, these are not the same as the chakras. So I complete this video here, and the third video will start. The mind's origin is in the heart. Namaskar, my dear friend.